each other pretty well now?
Yeah, I think so. So far, so good. Okay, I think we might be live.
You're live.
Yeah, we're live. Okay, so we're just waiting on 3 more panelists. And do you have the screen share, Andrew?
Yeah, just give me a second.
So we'll be starting in 10 minutes. If you're finding us on the live stream right now, we'll be with you in 10 minutes, 9 or 10 minutes. Hi, Molly. Welcome.
Hi.
Stories. Can't see you yet, but that's because we have the screen share on. And
I have it set that you can't see me, so let me go change it.
that's fine. We're not going to get started for another 6 minutes or so.
There's Molly. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Remind everyone to mute when not talking, just to avoid static and problems.
Is my microphone muted?
No, it is not.
So just a reminder, we are live now. So if you'd like to share the live link to your page, that'll allow the live stream to also be live on your Facebook profile for your contacts and friends to see our show tonight. So you just go to Essential Stories Project, and then there's a live button, and then that's a shareable post underneath the video. Yeah, I think so. The parse good fit. Okay, it's time to begin. So welcome everybody. We're waiting for one more panelist who hopefully will still join us. But I'm sure between the 6 of us, there's plenty to talk about also. So I am just gonna pull up my notes here and we'll begin. To start out, I want to welcome our online audience. Thank you for joining us for another Essential Stories roundtable discussion. And we're gonna get going in just a couple seconds. I just have to pull up one more document here. So while you're waiting, get comfy, get your favorite beverage so that you can snuggle in and listen to what is going to be a very thought-provoking and juicy conversation. Okay. Everybody can hear me okay? So welcome to the Essential Stories Live Roundtable. Essential Stories is a grassroots journalistic web series and live roundtable discussion series that gives voice to people on the front lines of our world's most pressing social issues. These are real people, real stories, real experiences. We promote progressive female and LGBTQ leadership of color on every level. I'm your host, Cara Cruickshank, and tonight's topic is what is the relationship between patriarchy and racism? Tonight on the roundtable is Kiki Dexter, Molly Ryan Kills Enemy, potentially Coyote Woman, also known as Kanyon Sayers-Roods, we're waiting for her. Naomi Raquel Lopez, Adam Basco-Mahieddine, hopefully I said that right, and Cameron Powers. Did I say your name right, Adam? Mahieddine? Yeah? I think I got a sort of, kind of, sort of. You're on mute.
That was a good try.
How do you say it right?
Oh, yeah, you said it right.
I said it right? All right, cool. Tonight we explore pre-colonial Indigenous models of leadership and governance. And we dedicate tonight's conversation to Indigenous women with an X and their descendants around the world, wherever you may be. To begin, I'd like to read a poem of my own to create the space. This is a piece called Dichotomies of a Woman. And Andrew, if you can switch to screen share, and I want to just give a quick shout out to our co-hosts tonight who are behind the scenes, Andrew Joseph and Eric Ancinelli. So here is my poem. I've been a trophy and I've felt like trash. I've been a prayer and a piece of ass. I've been the future and I've been a face. I've been enhanced and I've been erased. I've been erased. I've been a cougar and I've been a catch. I've been the fire and the match. Desired, detested, refused, requested, pillaged, protected, required, rejected. I've been the beauty and I've been the beast. I've been repressed and I've been released. I've caused the famine and I've been the feast. I've been worshipped and I've been warred upon. You want to hear more? I could go on and on. I've been needed and neglected, blessed and bested, silenced and suggestive, manicured and molested. I've been abused, I've been adored, I've been impassioned and ignored. I've been prized and I've been played. I've been predator and I've been prey. I've been a fugitive and a fantasy. I've been psycho and I've been sanity. I've been pious and profane. I've been the vessel. I've been the vein. I've been cheated and I've been chased, designated and displaced, informed and ill-advised. I've been valued and victimized. I've been the temptress and the tart. I've been the artist and I've been the art. I've been honored and I've been oppressed. I've been unwanted and I've been undressed. I've been released and I've been repressed. I've been supported and second-guessed. I've been a mother and a martyr. I've been the bounty and the barter, abandoned, approached, rewarded, reproached. I've been a girlfriend and I've been a ghost. I've been foraged and forgotten, dazzled and disheartened. I've been the melody and I've been the muse. I've been unified and I've been used. I've been glorified and I've been ghosted. I've been relished and I've been roasted. I've been safety and I've been sin. I've been fat and I've been thin. I've been a healer and a whore. I've been a blessing and a bore. I've been strong and I've been soft. I've been coddled and I've been cut off. I've been smitten and I've been smited. I've been induced and indicted. I've been sanctified and I've been sold. I've been ogled and I've been old. I've been blurred and I've been bold. I've been bold. I've been the bloom and I've been the bud. I've been the brine and the blood. I've been the booty and the bride. I've been the buyer and the bride. I've been replenished and I've been raped. I've been shaved and I've been shaped. I've been hailed and hated, molded and mutilated. I've brought the rage and I've been the refugee. I've been the greed and the giving tree. I've been the babe and I've been the bitch. I've been the weakling and the witch. I've been cherished and I've been chastised. I've been burned and I've been baptized. So that's our opening to set the space for this conversation. And next, I would like to welcome and introduce our first panelist for the evening. Each panelist will give a 3-minute intro to the topic from their perspective and angle. And I will set a 3-minute timer so that we stay roughly on track time-wise. And I'll give a thumbs up in my screen if you need to be reminded to wrap it up. So to begin with, I'd like to introduce, sorry, our first panelist couldn't make it. So I'm going to introduce Naomi Raquel Lopez in Boulder, Colorado. Naomi Lopez, who goes by she, her, Ella, is a Latinx entrepreneur and aspiring functional medicine nurse practitioner. Naomi's first exposure to healing was through her upbringing in Afro-Caribbean spiritual practices and curanderismo. Her indigenous maternal lineage stems from the Wirikuta people of present-day Mexico. Her paternal lineage comes from West Africa and the Taino people of present-day Puerto Rico. Naomi received her bachelor's degree in ecology and pre-medicine from the University of Colorado. While simultaneously obtaining her degree, she started her doula practice, Ori Doula. Naomi has woven her knowledge of modern-day medicine with her ancestral lineage to create a thriving birth and postpartum practice. She is a believer in mothering the mother and creating space for women to have their cuarentenas. Sorry, my Spanish is not so practiced. The sacred 40 days after childbirth. Recently, Naomi has started producing a sex education show for teens titled Eggplants and Peaches, which will be streamed on Colorado Public Radio in the near future. Naomi is a believer in whole human care. As a result of this, she has experience working in a parent educator medical assistant as a parent educator medical assistant for teenagers in a sexual health setting, medical assistant for transgender hormone therapy, and is an advocate for the normalization of abortion as healthcare. Naomi has applied to nursing school and is awaiting her acceptance letter. She hopes to be a licensed functional medicine nurse practitioner, providing transgender hormone therapy within the next 5 years. Her goal is to be a conduit between indigenous healing practices and modern medicine as a way to decolonize healthcare. So welcome, Naomi, my good friend, and please take the mic.
Thank you. I've been waiting to come on the table, so I appreciate it. Okay, so really I had some notes that I wanted to share, but then as I've been sitting here, I'm like, this has really affected me so deeply in my life, and I would just love to share it. So the patriarchy for me is more of a verb than a noun. And it essentially is the pillage and the robbing of culture and lineage, oral tradition, identity, intuition. I feel like the patriarchy is a set of norms and rules that dictates how you should be, how you should act, what you can do, and it's really limiting. I also feel like with that disconnect with others and with nature and with our elders, it feels as though the patriarchy destroys our connection to the divine feminine. And when I think of the divine feminine from Ifa, which is the religion that I was initiated into when I was 7, it uses natural forces in nature to essentially depict and manifest life. And so when I think of the patriarchy, I think of the fact that there is no connection with the divine feminine anymore. There is no matriarchy. And for me, I grew up in a small Midwestern town, and it was rural and very white. And I had a grandmother who would practice Ifa and Santeria and Brujeria essentially in Chicago. And so I lived 2 hours away in the suburb, not the suburbs, in a small rural town. And I always felt like I had to just like hide the magical parts of my life, like the spirituality, the ritual, the fact that I felt like I had supernatural powers when I was little. I just never talked about it. I was also really taunted for how I looked. So I'm pretty racially ambiguous, and a lot of people can't tell where I'm from, my ethnicity. And so I was made fun of a lot, and I was made to feel really ugly growing up. And so the racism is just blatant there. I wasn't able to talk about my spiritual practices. I wasn't able to embrace my beauty until I became older. And I didn't feel comfortable speaking Spanish in school because there were really no kids that spoke Spanish in my elementary school. And so for me, it kind of robbed me of my identity. And so now I'm living in this dual world where I interact with a lot of white people. I am, on a Western medicine route with the intention of incorporating my lineage. And I have incorporated it into my doula practice, Ori Doula, which Ori stands for Orisha. A lot of people don't know that, but I do merge the two with my traditional postpartum care. And for the people that seek it, I do provide it. And my goal is to be a bridge. And the patriarchy and racism go hand in hand for me in the sense that I haven't been able to fully embrace who I am and where I come from. That's all.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
That's a really good glimpse into the combination of coming from many different cultural identities as a female and all the contradictions and conflicts, and it's very relatable, and thank you for sharing all of that. It'll be definitely relevant to tonight's conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to welcome Kanyon, who just got into our chat. We can't see you yet, but we can see that you're here. If you just click your video icon, then you'll be visible to us and to the panel. There you are. Hi, welcome.
I was fighting with my background. I have another native blanket where I was like, oh dear, sorry about that.
No problem. If you want to take another minute, we can introduce another panelist and come back to you if that's better.
Sure, of course, thank you.
Okay, so good, we're all here now. All right. I keep getting messages popping up on my screen that get in the way of my notes. All right, so from next, I'm going to introduce another good friend of mine from Boulder, Colorado, Cameron Powers. And Cameron is a wonderful musician and linguist and historian and world traveler. From the Mississippi River Blues beginnings, Cameron grew up as a 14-year-old electric guitar playing band member in St. Louis. Oh, sorry, let me start over. Sorry, I'm getting a huge influx of messages which keep interfering with being able to read the screen. From the Mississippi River Blues beginnings, Cameron grew up in, there's a comma there that's throwing me off. From the Mississippi River Blues beginnings, Cameron grew up in as a 14-year-old electric guitar playing band member in St. Louis, Missouri, where he had the pleasure of hanging out in funky little venues where Ike and Tina Turner were playing and soaked in the Chuck Berry ecstasy of rural party times to the tear-soaked musical high-altitude musical majesties of the Peruvian Andes, to the time-stopping hesitation, black hole musical mysteries of Athens, Greece, to the divine feminine eternal worship dance in the telepathically jeweled musical venues of Cairo, Amman, and Damascus, to 70,000 miles of touring the amalgam mix of the cauldron called the USA. Cameron has had the amazing wild ride of a lifetime spent playing for people to dance. He uses oud, the fretless Turkish banjo, and Egyptian flutes, his voice. He weaves the magic and the magic weaves him. Come sing and dance and play with him. Welcome, Cameron. Please take the mic.
Hi. I'm so honored to be part of this. Thank you very much. I feel, especially Naomi's introduction touches me really deeply right now, because I just have been diving into northern Mexico and its curanderismo, studying more of the Yaqui and Mayo and Apache curanderismo, the ancient wisdom from there, which blows me away. It's the place of being present that is the teacher for all of us. I thought about the patriarchy again, and the opposite of patriarchy, of course, seems to be love. And patriarchy turns out to be synonymous with fear. The endless battle between love and fear is what I keep wanting to bring our attention back to. If you're a sharecropper and a slave, or an indigenous farmer, the patriarchy excludes women and Black, indigenous people of color completely. There are different kinds of patriarchy I've discovered. There is the farmer's patriarchy, which it tries to control territory. It wants to own the land, and it is the worst patriarchy. Women are treated as not only sex slaves, but they're excluded from that patriarchy completely. The other patriarchy comes from nomadic peoples, people like the Bedouin from the deserts or the Mongol nomads from Central Asia. They treat women like sex slaves also, but they don't exclude women, and they're not as racist as the farmer patriarchy people. That's something that I've figured out just studying things lately. The only thing that can save us is living in the moment with our creativity. There's no government, never has been, never will be, that really is what we're looking for. So we are the solution. We've heard that before, and I feel like I've had decent success living it out. I actually just published this Love Without Borders. It's an 800-page autobiography, really dealing with the fear-based reality is something that kills the shamanism, the magic of healing in all respects, and it replaces our right brain images and smells and touch and feel. It replaces all that with words. We're having a tough time even here right now because we can't smell each other. We can't really touch each other. We can't quite feel each other. So we're doing the best we can with words. But in order for us to be in our full magic, we would have to be in closer proximity. I've been in villages in Peru surrounded by ancient Inca wisdom. I spent 8 years of my life devoted to learning the Inca language, and I've also studied some of the Mexican indigenous languages, and then I did the same in Greece, where I learned the Greek language and the music. And I always found the music was the key. Wherever I went, if I learned the local music and the love songs, the world came alive for me. And I finally did that in Baghdad, in Cairo, in Iraq, in Syria. And I found that I was known for 60,000 people in the Cairo Stadium who invited me to sing Egyptian music for them as the American who invaded Iraq, not with weapons, but with music. And it wasn't even my music, it was their music. So I feel like the kinds of cross-cultural musical events and healing events that we see our younger people pushing across planet Earth today, that is the way that patriarchy succumbs, at least temporarily, to the people and the women and the brown people and the black people, the yellow people, with whom I've had love affairs all my life. Believe me, I'm so honored to be among any kind of diverse group. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. So love and music is a path. I'm sure we'll get deeper into that in the conversation. And I'm glad you're here bringing artistic energy. That's definitely needed in this conversation. And you're among other artists, so you're not alone. So next I'd like to introduce Kanyon. Let me get back to my notes on Kanyon here real quick. I had you first and now you are next. So Kanyon Coyote Woman Ahashkani Sayers-Roods is a Mutsun Olon, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing these correctly, and Chumash, two-spirited indigenous relative. She is proud of her heritage and her native name and is an active leader in the native community. She is a creative artist, ever inspired by nature and the natural world, a catalyst of decolonizing conversation, contemporary traditional artist, native Native representative, consultant, advocate of truth in history, multimedia artist, Coyote, and some say Coyote on the West Coast, right? I'm on the East Coast right now, and traditional ecological knowledge educator. Kanyon is the co-founder and CEO of Kanyon Consulting LLC, where she strives to build the gap between Indigenous and contemporary value systems. Her goal is to make a difference in the lives of others by sharing her life experiences and knowledge about California Native Americans, focusing on global education with emphasis on promoting understanding of the relationship between humanity and the natural world. Born and raised in Indian Canyon, the only federally recognized Indian country, quote unquote, along central coastal California. By her mother, Anne Marie Sayers, Kanyon continues to be an ancestor in training by honoring the past to shape the future. So welcome, Kanyon. I'm so glad you made it, and please take the mic.
Mishmin Tuhis, Conracat Canyon, Coyote Woman, Sayers-Roods. Thank you so very much for having me. Apologies on technology. The irony of me being a digital native and struggling with technology is not beyond me. As my bio shares, I am a California Indigenous Two-Spirited community member. I am of the Indian Canyon Mutsun Nation, and Anne Marie Sayers, tribal elder, is my mother. As an Indigenous person in the 21st century, there are times that there are conversations of community members saying, you walk in two worlds. And I'm not a fan of the binary. And so when I think about dismantling oppressive systems, I always want to start conversations with community members talking about what is decolonization and what is re-indigenization. And even with all of that being said, we have to question how we are and why we are. What practices are we replicating that either are foreign or common to our community and our history? I let people know that if you do honor truth in history, if you honor your ancestors, we can recognize that all of us have ancestors that are indigenous to the earth, that have indigenous lineages from where they once came. And when you acknowledge indigenous protocol, you then recognize that wherever we are on occupied or stolen land that has a rich, diverse history. And when we acknowledge that protocol, that respect, that acknowledgement that this is not the homeland of our ancestors, and when we reconnect to the history of the land that we are on and learn about the original ancestors, we can be respectful stewards of the land. In many indigenous cultures, elders and community members have shared with me and with our relatives that the plants, the animals, they are the first people of the earth. Humans came last, and it is our responsibility. It has been given to us as a responsibility to steward the land, to tend it. Yes, to sustain ourselves, but to be in community with all living systems. Even if you're a vegetarian, I visit third grade classrooms. When I ask them, how many people are omnivores? How many people are vegetarian? Even if you're a vegetarian, you still need to take a life. You take a life or you impact a life to sustain your own. That is a part of life. How are you reciprocating? How are you being accountable? Is your practice ethical or sustainable? Are you a part of that system? Are you acknowledging your impact to that system? And so when I talk about dismantling oppressive systems, we have to think about what is the colonial construct. I tend to say, because when I was a youngster, I was in that argument thinking about white and black and brown and beings of color. And I used to say white people a lot. And then a lot of my friends who were decolonizing their walk of life pretty much voiced to me that their indigenous lineages have beautiful rooted practice and accountable measures. And so I do now understand white culture is not a thing. It is a thing and it's not a thing. You can be proud of your ancestors and not have pigmentation to your skin and thus be lumped into a category labeled white. However, white is not a culture. You can be proud of your European ancestry, pagan roots, Pictish, Gaelic, Celtic. All of these things can be amazing. It's just how far or close you are to the equator is what plays with your pigmentation. But the colonial mindset, the Western settler colonial mindset is devoid of responsibility. It is divorced to accountability, to its connection and kinship to nature. We are of a, well, I like to call it a instant gratification consumeristic nation that is engages in disposable behaviors and resource extraction, both of our environment and of bodies, energy, people. And that Western colonial construct is not accountable. It's not reciprocal. It does not consider how its actions or words impact its community, its environment, or even 7 generations in the future. So I myself am taking steps to decolonize. I am not decolonized. I am taking steps to recognizing what does indigeneity mean to me and what does re-indigenization mean to me. To re-indigenize our methodologies is not to exactly go back to the past and try and replicate everything the way it was, because there's no way we could get there. From the invasive ecological impact, invasive species, plants, to the dramatic impact to our water resources, to our environment. But what does it mean to slow down, to not engage in that Western colonial construct, and to bring back Indigenous practices, and to be accountable and responsible, and really think about what does it mean to be a good ancestor in training. So thank you. I am glad to be here and share my perspective.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kanyon. And I love the term ancestor in training. So much of what you said is very nourishing to hear, and just getting lots of reminders of things that I know deeply and haven't necessarily heard out loud in a while. So thank you for that also. I'd like to introduce Kiki Dexter. Let me pull up her intro real quick. Sorry, I had to hop around a little. We went. Oh, sorry, no, it's time to introduce, Kiki. All right, here are my notes. So born in Mobile, Alabama, Kiki draws inspiration in her art from her Southern roots, complicated history, and an objective to challenge the current power structure with thought-provoking lyricism. With a distinguishable style, Kiki has a voice that is unique, catchy, and powerful over the modern hip-hop beats she pairs with her words. Her body of work includes 4 music videos, 1 album, and 4 singles. And I can say, definitely check them out. They're very unique and great to have in your music library, kikidexter.com. A dynamic creative, Kiki's background includes rap, dance, graphic design, video production, acting, and writing. She uses these as tools to enlighten her community with encouraging content that uplifts and strengthens them. Her activism began in college at the University of Alabama, where she obtained her bachelor's in arts communication. There, she began using her natural talent for connecting with people, leading projects and enthusiasm to share knowledge for several notable causes. She created a mentorship program for young women called Aida Tafari. Hopefully I said it right.
Aida Tafari, yeah.
Tafari produced a documentary about the bias Muslim women face in a predominantly Christian white town, and supported various functions centered around educating the student body about Black history. In Los Angeles, She has been an active member of Aim for the Heart for 3 years, where she's developed weekly mic sessions, participated in several school assemblies, volunteered at San Quentin prison, and performed at several fundraisers. She has also performed during the Cherish Hands Foundation's events dedicated to enriching the lives of foster children. Currently, she's the director of media and art with Aim for the Heart, starting her own business and continuing to use her voice and musical skills to promote positive messages for the masses. And I've been privy to some pretty kick-ass monologues she's been writing in recent months as well during lockdown. So great to see you back, Kiki, and please take the mic.
Hello, all. My name is Kiki, coming from Los Angeles. Thank you for having me. It's always great to be here. And so on the topic of patriarchy and racism, these are two subjects that I deal with on a daily, identifying as a Black woman in America. And, you know, one of the things that I've come to realize is, you know, the further you go back in history, the more female and the more Black it gets. We all span from this one side of Africa. And of course, like the lady just said before me, you know, the variations in our skin tone is just based on our bodies adapting to our environment. And so, you know, realizing that this system, one, patriarchy is a 4,000-year-old system that won't go away overnight. And racism, you know, one of the things that I always point out is the Willie Lynch letter, and how, you know, we, especially, you know, my generation is still living in the repercussions of something like the Willie Lynch letter that was designed specifically to use race to demean people and to make them inferior. And when you think about these subjects, patriarchy and racism, they both go hand in hand in just making one group inferior. And the reason why it still continues is because those that are in power, usually white and male, are benefiting from it. And so when we think about how to combat this, right? It's, like I said, been here for 4,000 years, racism still going on. We talk about that daily. One of the things that we're putting out now is the hashtag Breonna Taylor, realizing that this, you know, Black woman still is not getting justice. In order for us to combat this and to get to a point where this is not something that's dominating our narrative on a daily basis, we have to, one, recognize that we are living in a social construct that, you know, not even just Black and white, but as the topic invokes, Indigenous people. We all, just being alive, just being human, the beautiful thing about us being here is that we are living in a world that's been created for us to survive. That's beautiful, that's magical. We are humans, we are stardust. And for us to have these societal structures that make it hard for us to just to connect on our magic divinity of just being alive is absurd. You know, we are of nature, but we go against nature so hard. And I think the reason why is because we've continued in this system. So as far as, you know, my ideas on how to combat that, one, we have to recognize that. And then two, we have to continue to make conscious effort to change it, right? One of the holidays that's been celebrated now is equal pay for Black women or women of color. And I think it's great, but it's still like 2020 and we're still having days where we have to celebrate this, so we acknowledge it because it still hasn't changed. So, and, you know, really with COVID, I just think about how immediate the action was to try to stop the spread. I feel like if we treated these subjects, both patriarchy and racism, with the same urgency we treated this disease, I couldn't imagine the type of world that the generations after me will experience. You know, it saddens my heart that I still have to have conversations with my grandmother, who's still scared about my safety as a Black woman, because she was also scared about her safety as a Black woman, and it continues. You know, I don't want my little cousins, my little female cousins, or my little male cousins, or just any younger generation of whichever hue, to also have that same pressure to just try to survive in this beautiful human experience that, like I said, is just a phenomenon of our galaxy. So yeah, I don't know if I actually have my notes up. I'm not sure if you were motioning me to quit, but yeah.
No, you're good. Thank you. Is that everything you wanted to say?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just.
And then, you know,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Like I said, I wasn't keeping track of the time, but you know, just kind of tying it back to your the intro for me. One of the things that I also do is try to take responsibility in this change that I'm seeking, right? So as a hip hop artist, I know that both patriarchy and racism are something that's threaded in the industry now. And so if I'm going to be someone who's going to partake in it, I have to, one, be conscious of the music that I make, and the type of things that I involve myself in. So you know, I want to lead by example. I want to be the change that I want to see, right? So in my music, I make sure that it's positive, right? I don't I don't try to keep projecting those same stereotypes that like I said, just dominates the whole industry now. So that's what I do with my music, with my nonprofit work with Aim for the Heart, that I got to, of course, meet you with Kyerra. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you do want inspiring, especially uplifting and empowering music, go to Kiki's website, and our co-host is putting her links in right now. And by the way, for all the panelists, when you're giving your intro, we're delivering all your info on the Facebook chat for the audience. So next, it's my pleasure to introduce Molly. Molly Ryan Kills Enemy is a community leader raising awareness for Indigenous issues, the true history of the United States of America, or Turtle Island, and how that history has negatively impacted our Native communities. She is fighting against the colonial violence that the Indigenous people have suffered and continue to suffer. Molly Ryan Kills Enemy is a Sikangu Lakota woman from St. Francis, South Dakota on Rosebud Reservation. She was adopted out of her family and the Lakota Nation at birth, and her family has been and continues to be about healing from the colonial violence inflicted upon her ancestors to her and her family. She is a recovering meth addict and alcoholic with over a decade of clean and sober time. She is also a survivor of domestic violence, rape, and sexual abuse. Her healing journey began when she decided to end the cycles of intergenerational and historic traumas. Molly Ryan Kills Enemy runs the group Sovereign Nations in hopes of educating the uneducated of the history of her homelands, Turtle Island. She is working at dismantling a white Eurocentric system that does not adhere to the cultures that are living in Turtle Island. She also runs a page called Red Woman Resistance for the Indigenous women around the globe to help them and others understand the roles of women in history and to help inspire Indigenous and non-Indigenous women to rise up and stand against the patriarchal society that runs this country. So it's great to have you here, Molly. And if you can direct people, I didn't have links to your pages, as you know, but if you can give us some reference of where to find out more about your work, that would be awesome.
My name is Molly Ryan Kills Enemy. My prisoner of war name is Mary Ryan, and I'm a full-blood Sitrunku Lakota, and my Lakota name is Chante Okichi Uyewi, which means do work from their heart, woman. So I was adopted out at a week old, and it affected me. I was adopted and raised by a white family, white Irish German, and it kind of that is how my journey went. Is the choices I made, the emotions that I felt my whole entire life, and turning to the toxic behaviors, drinking and meth addiction, always turning to abusive men my entire life, and always involved with child protective services. We had 3 open cases at one time. I had a child removed. My rights were terminated. And that was due to my meth addiction. It wasn't until my domestic violence cases came up that I recognized behaviors in my history. And I began doing the really hard work of looking at why I was going to unhealthy relationships, why I was turning to alcohol. And it was being involved with child protective services that it opened my eyes to colonial violence and patriarchy. And it was around Standing Rock. I had just gone through a leadership, FLTI, Family Leadership Training Institute in 2016, when I began understanding civics. I am not a political person. My goal is to reclaim my tribal sovereignty. And so it was then that I began really piecing together my life story, my history with patriarchy and colonial violence and how it impacted my family. To a point where, I have a son in prison right now because Child Protective Services shut our case because we weren't worth their time or effort. And so it's really hard in moments of my life to understand the patriarchy and how it tore apart my family. But also knowing that I needed to step away from that, and I needed to start raising awareness, not just for myself and my family, but for people, Indigenous families, Native families across the nation who have found themselves in the same situation. There was a moment after, I don't know, it was like 7 or 8 restraining order violations that I had gone to court and fought and said, stood up and said, he needs a higher bond, this needs to happen. And him coming to court and lying and having the courts reprimand me. And they dropped his charges for the 7th or 8th time in a row because he walked in. He was white. He walked in and he lied. And he recruited people to be his witnesses. And I was so frustrated. I mean, I was sobbing. I was screaming. I was furious that they allowed him to walk one more time. And I was asking myself, I was driving down the road and I said, why does this always happen to me? Why is this always happening to me? And this voice told me, because you aren't the only family. And it was so loud and clear to me. And that's when I realized I had to start speaking up more than I was, more than just going into the courtrooms and standing up for him. And we don't live in Denver any longer. We live in a lot smaller town. And I was very active at one point, getting myself involved as a parent advocate for families, for Native families, so that they would understand the laws and the procedures that people had to take, that the courts had to take, because even though we have laws protecting us, the courts don't like to follow those laws because they're a pain. And that's what attorneys have told me. And so it was the patriarchy for me is very much in parallel with the racism, because what I have seen and what my own experience has been is that white men control. And since 1492, Indigenous women's voices have been silenced. We were once considered the backbone of the tribe and our families. And that was stolen from us in 1492, when they began raping and ravaging the women and killing us and taking our voices away. And one of my writings that I've written, I've talked about my voice being silenced before I was even born. And I had to do a lot of hard work to get to the point where I could speak my story. And you know, understanding that it makes people uncomfortable, but this is the history of the United States of America. This is the history of patriarchy. This is what happens to families, Indigenous families, not just here on Turtle Island, but across the globe. That's it. This is what's happening. And, you know, it's so important for me to help tell my story so that it inspires that woman who's going through domestic violence, or the woman who's sitting and drinking or turning to drugs, or the woman who's lost a child. It's really important to get my story out, because it is, you know, the last case that we had, it was devastating. It was devastating how it tore apart my entire family. Lies being told by the abuser, and having the United States government take his word over the truth of children, my children, and calling me crazy, and having white women walking into my room, into my house, and telling me that I was mental, and that they were going to remove my kids because I was mental. Getting to the point where they would tear me down. The tactics were as narcissistic, and tearing me down, trying to break me. And so it's so important for me to end those cycles, and not just with myself, but for the Indigenous people, for Indigenous women, because we're bullied, we are tortured, we're murdered. A lot of us go missing, and the Department of Justice will not look into our murders or disappearances. And so that's, it's a huge thing for me, understanding my story and connecting it to history. And it's a big issue that, for me, like I said in the beginning, it's about reclaiming my sovereignty and living and learning to become self-sustaining, and teaching my children how to do the same. And then creating a self-sustaining life for ourselves. And then we take that a step further and we create a space for women, Indigenous women, where we teach the wisdom and the knowledge that's been lost through patriarchy. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story here. And it is an extremely important issue, and something that I'm very glad we're bringing to light here in this conversation, as well as to anyone who is witness to this conversation now or in the future, and the ripple effects that can have. So thanks for being part of this and for speaking that. I'd like to introduce Adam, who is our last but not least panelist of the evening. And as soon as we have Adam's intro, then we're going to move to our Q&A. So Adam Basco-Mahieddine, did I do it? Adam.
Yeah.
Wait, let me hear you say it.
Adam Basco-Mahieddine.
Okay, Adam Basco-Mahieddine.
Yeah, there's a lot of letters in there.
One of these days, and it'll be easier to say. Mahieddine.
Work on together.
He's a Moroccan Filipino American actor and singer and writer, born and raised in Flushing, Queens. He is a recent graduate of LaGuardia Community College, where he collaborated with Stu, creator of Passing Strange, to create Columbus is Happening, an original musical devised by LaGuardia students. Adam has been involved with climate change theater action for the past 3 years, where he helps raise voices talking about issues surrounding climate change. Adam is a part of the Men of Color Healing Circle at the Urban Atabex Organizing and Healing in Community Network, created by Esperanza Martel. He helps create space for other men of color and himself to release generational trauma. So good to see you again, Adam, and please take the mic.
Yes, thank you, Kyerra, for having me. You know, it's within my best interest to hold space for people and send love to where it hurts and where it's needed. And it's within my power to learn how to do that as best as I can to the people around me, because at the end of the day, nobody is alone. Nobody makes it alone. What the patriarchy means to me, putting it simply, is leading with false intentions. Leading with intentions that benefit a certain group of people, straying away from our primordial beat. I'm a firm believer that we have to go back in order to move forward. Society's been running with the limp for a really long time, and we need to stop and take care of that limp before we move forward. There have been so many advancements within our society. I think that we have learned to prioritize productivity over humanity for the sake of winning. My question to that is, winning what? It's been concerning during this time. There's been a lot of constantly unfolding events. During this pandemic turned, I want to say, civil rights movement, it's been interesting to see what's been going on around me within like a 5-mile radius. I feel like the interactions that I have with people are so much more intentful, knowing that I don't have this sense of community around me, which I do believe that there is power in community. I'm from the Philippines and my dad is from Casablanca, Morocco. And growing up, that's always meant it says here that my internet connection is unstable. Am I coming in okay?
Yeah, you dropped just briefly a couple times, but I can hear you.
Okay. Where was I? Yeah, growing up in a biracial household, it's been a series of assimilating and disassociating. Thank you, Kanyon. And growing up and coming into my adulthood, I realized that I've always known who I was. I've just been subconsciously comparing it to a standard. And I think that that's the case with a lot of people like me growing up in New York, which is a very interesting city that like welcomes people with open arms, but pushes people away at the same time. And I believe that it's within my power to take myself off of this conveyor belt of obligation and go inward, even if it does feel selfish, even if it does feel like counterintuitive, because I battle with imposter syndrome. And I know that a lot of people who grow up within the same circumstances as I do battle with that same feeling as well. And I don't think that I'd be able to express that if I hadn't heard that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez battles with the same imposter syndrome. Because when you grow up and you don't see people like you succeeding, you believe that that is your fate. And it is within my power to change that narrative, and I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. Men have generationally been subject to a life of shame. And I believe that there is room for men to heal. I believe that men need to heal because we've been running with the limp for a really long time, and we've gotten strength wrong. I think we've gotten strength wrong. I think over time we've learned to confuse strength with brute force, and it's not. Strength is vulnerability. Strength is understanding. Strength is listening and creating space. Hashtag sacred masculinity, absolutely. And it's within my power to hold space for my community, even if it hurts, even if it's confusing at first. Yeah, a lot of this, I believe that a lot of men have the same problem, but I think that what happens is that a lot of men create a solution to that problem, which in turn becomes a problem within itself. And I feel like in order to create healing, we have to have conversations that are uncomfortable. We have to lean into these weird feelings, but then like look back and put into perspective and say, well, I mean, that wasn't so bad. Maybe I'll do it again next time. But yeah, I think I'm rambling a little bit, so I'm just gonna stop it there. If anything comes up, I'll write it down and mention it later.
That's great, Adam. Thank you. And thanks for speaking on the need for the male population for healing and to heal, and the direction, pointing the compass towards sacred masculinity. That's also an important aspect to everything that we're talking about here, for sure. So I think now that we've heard from every panelist and gotten such a rich blend of angles, we can dive into our first question. And Kanyon, I'm gonna let you speak first because I know you have to run early. Before I pose the question to the panel, I want to reset the space because I know that with all of what we're talking about here, there are many problems to solve. And in order to solve problems, I think we need to not only identify them and name them, but also cultivate and create new vision. And that's what this conversation is very much dedicated to tonight. We need to set, and in order to set that intention, I want to read a poem that I wrote inspired by the writings of Clarissa Pinkola Estes about Butterfly Woman, who is an important figure in many North American First Nations. So this is Butterfly Woman. Becoming a butterfly is the work of, oh, thanks, Andrew. He's sharing the screen so you can read along. Okay, thank you. Becoming a butterfly is the work of intuition, of experience. It is to eat ravenously. It is to take in everything around you. It is to shed your skin not once, not twice, but 5 times. Only then are you ready to be comfortable in it. Only then are you ready to turn inward for a while. I hang upside down to feel things differently than before. And in the darkness, I allow myself to change, to grow, to expand. Tiny cells called imaginal cells begin to form inside me. These cells are different from caterpillar cells. They carry different information. They vibrate to a different frequency, the frequency of butterfly. At first, my caterpillar immune system thinks that they are enemies and attacks them. New ideas can seem dangerous, but the imaginal cells hold a strong vision of the future. They know that a little is enough. A little goes a long way. A little can change the world. They organize, they cooperate, they bond together and make new formations. Soon, my caterpillar immune system surrenders to the strong new vision of the future. It becomes a nutritious soup. It becomes a nutritious soup to feed this new version of myself. Transformed, I reemerge out of the darkness. At first, my wings are quite small. I am learning to be new, but in time they expand, and then I am ready to soar. I feed on nectar. I bask in the beauty of flowers. Beauty above me, beauty below me, beauty before me, beauty behind me. I walk in beauty. Transformation is as easy as that. It is easier than you think. It is easier than you think. To create the future, you must have strong vision. Without the pollinators, would there be any future? Pollination is the work of intuition, the work of age, of experience. It is a job for one who has lived through many cycles, who has a strong sense of knowing, the rememberer, of old ideas, the mythic voice. I am the one who translates between many beings. I bring differences together to make new ideas blossom. I take a little from here and put it there, and a little from there and put it here. I am the gentle but essential female fertilizing force that re-enchants you into the world around us, lending luminosity to every footstep. I energize and invite you to walk the pollen path. I am here, here, here. I am there, there, there. I am awake. I am alive. Say it with me. I am here, here, here. I am there, there, there. I am awake. I am alive. So the question I would like to pose to the panel is this. There is much talk of dismantling the systems which were created by colonial Europeans to oppress BIPOC, B-I-P-O-C, Black, Indigenous people of color in the US. What are some pre-colonial models of leadership, community, and governance that we can learn from and begin to apply nationally, locally, and/or individually to replace the current systems and hierarchies in an impactful way? So Kanyon, I'm going to let you start. And then this is meant to be conversational, so feel free to jump in when you want. If it's a lot of people trying to speak at once, you can always put a hand raise in your window and I'll invite you in if it gets intense, but otherwise just jump in naturally.
Thank you so much. And in my mind, when I was speaking earlier, I told myself to mention something and I had misplaced it. And then during the conversation, I'm like, oh, I have something to add. And then perfectly, this question is exactly what I wanted to add. So thank you. Deep apologies. I will be departing shortly because more commitments. I'll be on another Zoom call, an international conversation, actually around the similar thread. So those will be this clip and those will be on my YouTube channel later. So go ahead and follow, and that's on Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff. With that question, I do want to point out, as I am hypercritical of that Western settler colonial mindset, it also cherry picks. Did you know that the United States Constitution actually has roots with indigenous democracy and governing systems and structures? But wait, the founding fathers, they only cherry picked the convenient parts that they thought were helpful. So when it comes to like our Constitution, the Iroquois Confederation had their own governing structure, and they are of a matrilineal society where the women, the aunties, the grandmas were the final decision makers who had the strength and opportunity to take away said male or any leader if they weren't doing their job correctly after the whole governing structure of people deciding who to put in charge because they are to be representative of that community. So matriarchal systems, women and aunties in a circle, conversing and strategizing that final say, because when you think about it, the reason matrilineal societies are really, really strong, and considering why it is important that they are in charge, or in a sense have a sense of responsibility for the community, is because women have the ability to bring life into the world. Yes, we are humans and we need to procreate appropriately. However, a woman carries life, and once that life is born, unless there's some difficulty, usually with chemical imbalances, majority of the time, that little life is so significant to that mother that that life is more important than her own life. So when you consider how a woman walks into this world and then is a life bringer, that sacred life bringer can make a decision that isn't about her, that isn't about ego. It is about how that next generation, how the community can go forward. So that is why when it comes to some decisions, final decisions, aunties and grandmothers and those women leaders are the stronghold. We need to rematriate the land. We need to bring in our matrilineal governing structures and reconnect to that sacred feminine and respect that sacred masculine. We have our circles for men, we have our circles for women, and we have these respected spaces for our two-spirited, current contemporary term, two-spirited community members. In all of our nations, we have our own words. And the same thing when it comes to our doctors and our healers. Colonial construct calls Indian or Native American shamanism. No, I am so tired of hearing that word, because guess what? Our community doesn't have that word. That word comes from over by the Ivank people near Sakha in Siberia territories. That is their word, because some white colonial constructed mind. Oh, wait, an affluent, male-bodied man of opportunity and affluence was able to travel to indigenous peoples and then cherry pick and say, oh, shamanic teachings and shamanic healings. And then it got documented. Oh, wait, so many documents are written by male-bodied, fair-skinned men of power. That colonial construct permeates our documents, our rules, our legislative practices. Why are things the way they are? Why do we abide by and why do we use these phrasings? Why do we commit to perpetuating settler colonial violence? So when I look at these systems and when we try to dismantle them, we need to decolonize, we need to step away, we need to consider our impact, and that means question everything. And so, yeah, we need to rematriate the land, we need women in charge, and it's not going to be the opposite of patriarchy, because that's what a lot of men fear, that's what a lot of people in power fear, and it's quite frustrating because they don't want to be put in the position that they've been perpetuating and doing and using oppressive tactics to maintain. That's what a lot of people are scared of. And then that's why that word feminism is now weaponized and so much around there. I can ramble about this. I'm looking at my other Zoom call and I'm like, ah! And so I'm going to be talking about international Indigenous voices in leadership and talking about the same topic. And I'm honored to be in circles like this because it's quite cathartic. I recognize how I have been on my journey towards healing by being in circles like this, by both voicing vulnerabilities, voicing struggles and triumph, but also like purging some of this negativity. As I said when I was younger, I used to say white people this, white people that, and then I'm like, settlers, people who are not from here, Western colonial thinking, outsiders coming in, oppressing and believing that they are right, that their truth is the only truth. We need more culture sharing opportunities, because when we witness other cultures, even as simple as when I'm sad about COVID because little kids aren't able to go stay at their friends, to go see how the other family lives, to see how good they have it, or wow, I really appreciate what I have, or oh my gosh, they have other opportunities that I don't have. I don't recognize their truth or their lived experience. And then when they zoom out, other governing structures, other ways of life, other methodologies of engaging and practicing in the world, other meals and ways to respect living systems. I believe we need more culture sharing opportunities. Did you know that California has in excess of 250 language dialects? We have 90 language groups, but inside those groups there are numerous dialects, meaning with each of those dialects are different ways that people practice their culture and have their own doctors and healers and teachers and wisdom keepers and governing structures and practices of protocol. That's just California. Yet today, when people talk about natives, they think about the stereotypical documented ones by books of other affluent people who decided to write and talk about it and base their career off of it. People entering education systems, having access to my indigenous wisdoms and teachings that other people documented, which is great, but I don't even have access to them. What's up with that? Federal recognition. Oh, the US government identifies you as a sovereign nation? Wait, why do we have to get their permission to be sovereign? Interesting. Oh, this whole construct about pureblood. If someone wants to say, how native are you? Did you know that that's another colonial construct to erase native peoples? Because in my community, we marry outside of the family as to not have unhealthy beings. So you strengthen your bloodline by marrying outside. So with this construct of, oh, you're not enough native. Oh, all of a sudden, all of them disappear, and there's no need to be accountable to the historic systems set in place to take native peoples out. We need to honor truths in history. I happen to be hyped up on the California indigenous natives perspective. However, my family has Euro-Mutt ancestry that I'm really proud of. My last name is Sayers. I'm a storyteller, a sayer. But in all of this, we can be proud of these historical occurrences, how we came together as a community, how we come together and share these times and spaces. I am honored to share space with people who have rich history from different territories. I don't want to go back and send everybody back to wherever they came from. I want people to learn from everybody. We need to be accountable and respectful and recognize history so it doesn't repeat. Honor the past to shape the future. We can honor the wisdom that was shared by our elders and also some of the atrocious things. We need to look at it and have those difficult conversations about what is this Western colonial construct of behavior, of entitlement, this affluenza, this complacency of lack of accountability to the rights of nature. Look into the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Go Google the rights of nature and consider, what does it mean to respect Indigenous histories? Because all of us, every single one of us, because we're all from the earth, have Indigenous lineages that we can honor and respect. And then we could also take pride in being present in other territories and be good stewards of the land and be good community members together by sharing culture and truth and history. So I thank you for letting me be in this conversation, and I'm sad I'm going to miss out on more conversations. So thank you, and I'm deeply appreciative, and I'm honored to share space with all these amazing speakers. All y'all give me energy and hope. Thank you.
Definitely mutual. And that covered a lot. So thank you, Kanyon. And who wants to carry the conversation forward? And remember that this part is unstructured, so feel free to chime in as you wish.
Man, that's a tough act to follow. I could still feel like the earth shaking, honestly. I'm learning a lot, and I'm doing my best right now to absorb all these teachings right now. And I just want to mention that I'm really grateful, and I'm absorbing a lot. One of the things that I want to mention is education versus indoctrination. We need to stop teaching these kids about Thanksgiving. We need to stop teaching them this lie. I believe that, when you go to school, you are taught a set of beliefs from a very young age. You were taught that boys are pink and girls are blue. You're taught that there are all these binaries. And I think that a lot of the curriculum needs to be restructured. There was this article by the NYU News that talked about Tisch professors resigning to protest over the lack of BIPC representation. And it says that when educators of color aren't present and white educators lack the tools to hold meaningful conversations about race, the responsibility to educate race tends to fall on students of color who are often unprepared to become teachers for all things related, right? And I remember a couple semesters back, I was taking a theater history class, and I think my theater history professor thought he was doing, the best job that he could. And I felt like he was doing well, but it was the curriculum that he was teaching that was just not helping. You're out here teaching us this antiquated, we're talking about Greek theater, we're talking about, all of their contributions. And then when we talk about things like kabuki theater, we only get a glimpse into that world. It's time we create more space, and the space we can definitely create is within our education system. We need to have more conversations, and it needs to be more inclusive, because it's very binary, and we are mindlessly perpetuating a lie. So I have to run out too. My godson's staying over with my family, and he's getting picked up tonight, and I gotta go say bye.
But it has been an absolute pleasure.
Like
yeah.
what? And any last calls to action before you go?
When in doubt, lead with love. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Have a great night.
All right. Take care, everybody. Great meeting you.
So if you wanted to add anything, if you're following us online right now and you'd like to pose a question to the panel, please enter it into the chat and our moderator will alert us. And did anyone else want to add to my question?
Could you ask that again so I can put my...
So the question again was, what are some pre-colonial models of leadership, community, and governance that we can learn from and begin to apply nationally, locally, and individually to replace the current systems and hierarchies in an impactful way? Thoughts?
Well,
So,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, well, what I initially thought when you posed that question earlier was, you know, one of the books that I actually just ordered is from a lady named Maria Gimbutas, I want to say, Gimbutas, but it's about at one point in time, it's nothing but figurines of women. Like that's all. She's an archaeologist, and she just started to uncover, like the further she went back in history, you saw all these like figures, sculptures, where to the point where it seemed like it was nothing but like a world of women. And so she documented it all in this book. I want to say that the name of it is the language of the goddess, is what it's called. But yeah, it's a fantastic book, but it just shows you that, once again, like I was saying earlier, that this the structure is only so old. It's only 4,000 years old. That's a very small portion of our existence thus far. And so when we start to consider, okay, what other societies can we look at to pose as a model for us to change our current social structure, I think about that book, like just even acknowledging that, we always think about our ancestors in the sense of, especially the way it's taught in Western society, as the caveman. Like the caveman is always very masculine. But what we can learn from our ancestors and from the ancients is that they saw the value in the female. The female wasn't strictly property. The way the patriarchy spun, it really created the first type of slavery, and that was making women property in the conquest to take over other tribes and so forth, with European expansion all over the world. That's what Molly was just talking about earlier. So I think when we acknowledge that in our history, our prerequisites to who we are today, that our ancestors got it. They understood that the female is very important. The female and male together is very important, and one and the other, one shouldn't be superior versus inferior. There's a leveled playing ground that we all should be on. And I even think about the Egyptians. Adam just mentioned the Greeks, and how, in theater he was learning all about the Greeks, but what we don't realize is the Greeks used to get their degrees in ancient Egypt, and ancient Egypt is in Africa, and so just understanding even that we've gotten so much, our modern society, we've gotten so much from Egypt. but it's like we picked and choose the type of things that we want, because in their social structure, it wasn't as if the man and the female were on different tiers. They were on the same level. They're all a part of creation. The creation story, our biblical creation story, is based off of this Egyptian concept and ideology that is the, once again, prerequisites for where we are today. It's like Western society picked and choose exactly what they wanted. So we can look at our ancients for an example of how to move forward. We can look at, they had models, they didn't have billboards back in the day. They had sculptures, they had rock, they had, cliffs. And that's how they put out their quote unquote, not propaganda, but they put out their messaging and their understanding of their world through those art forms. And so I think, in our day and time, the fact that we have the internet where we can in an instant have access to the world with our thumb, like we're all in different parts of the world, in America, wherever we are, but we're all talking at the same time. That's incredible. That's fantastic. Like I bet Egypt would go crazy to have this type of technology. It's what the pharaohs can talk to everybody on the Nile. So the fact that we have things like this, we can start putting out information to help folks be knowledgeable of the fact that this is a problem, that we too have to see women, we have to see people of color as people, one, so that we can change our structure and hopefully create a future where it's not taboo that Kamala Harris is running for vice president with another white man, but it's things like that shouldn't continue to happen. It shouldn't be the first. It's 2020. We have so many tools, we have so much technology. We can really just change the whole structure of everything if we just face forward with it. If we just hit it straight to the point and stop beating around the bush.
Stand up and say it. That's what I remember wandering so many parts of the world. I've seen every once in a while somebody stand up and just tell it like it is. And everybody in for a mile around went, yeah, she knows what she's talking about. And those people were always women. So keep talking.
So I think it's important that we understand the balance between female and male, and we start pulling back towards that balance, because that's where we have become lost as a society, is that we have allowed men to dominate, which is where the patriarchy comes in. And we have allowed the men to dominate. Just even recently, men that I know feeling a little too comfortable telling me how to present myself, how to speak, how to behave, if I should wear makeup or not wear makeup. I think it's really important. I don't allow that in my conversation. I don't allow a male to tell me, but it's about reclaiming our femininity, and I don't want to be equal to a man because I don't have male qualities. I don't have male traits. I want to be recognized as a female. I want to be recognized as an indigenous matriarch. And the only way that we can begin doing that is if, I can't remember who said it, but leading by example. And reclaiming those roles for the females and whatever nation that you are from, reclaiming those roles and not waiting for permission to do it, not waiting. You know, I come from a community where, you know, they want you to ask permission to do things. And that's not really how it is. I believe when we do things with good intention, that when we do things with good intention, the people will recognize that. And
Absolutely, yeah.
you know, it's more about doing the good intention, restoring the balance between the men and the women, and understanding our roles. I think that when the white settlers came, they lost their culture. They lost where they came from. And so a lot of women, and I watch, I observe, and a lot of women have lost that power within. You know, you know, I see a lot of it when it happens in domestic violence. We've lost that power, and we've been taught as a society to not speak, to not say anything. I know growing up as white, the message to me was always don't say anything, don't make waves, you know, you've done too much, you know. And I was also taught we don't treat people differently based on the color of their skin. And as an adult, you know, I never treated anyone differently. I never was not someone's friend because they were Black or Asian or Hispanic. But as an adult, that teaching has been a rude awakening for me, because I am treated differently. I am silenced a lot. White women have a tendency to try to bulldoze over me. And, you know, we are a society that is fearful. We are fear-based. Our teachings are fear-based. And so that's why it's important that we recognize what patriarchy is. And we reclaim our roles. We understand the balance. And we restore the balance between the male and the female.
Hop in there and just ask each of you, what are some specifics to that idea? Like, what are some specific ways that you find to do just that, to restore balance, at least in your own life and in the circles that you interact with? If anyone wants to add to that, I would be interested to hear.
I'll go. I haven't spoken much in a while. I say just take up space, you know, learn when to step up and learn when to step down, and speak up. I think that what I need is, I do a lot. So like, I need to just rest. I need to like eat healthy, take care of my gut, because that's where I hold my anxiety. And if I have a flare up, I just look at my diet and then I rest again, and then I need to sit. And that's where I'm really struggling, is like sitting, working at my altar. It's very emotional. It's all intertwined with my family and where we're at. That influences my spiritual practice. And So when I'm good with my family, I'm in tune with my ancestors. When I'm off with my family, I'm a little off in general, all over the place. So looking at that, what am I running from? What are my boundaries? You know, repairing is important. You have to repair your lineage. And I think that starts with your family. But like, are there things that just are toxic and you're just always the person trying to repair and you need to set a boundary, or do you need to push into it a little bit more and really make your case to fix that? I think, so I call myself a middle adult. So I'm not an elder and I'm not an adolescent. So it's part of the reason why I started Eggplants and Peaches, is because I was the only child until I was 9. And so everyone that was born after I was 9 is now either 18 or under. And so the youngest cousin of mine is 3 and the oldest sibling of mine is 18, and everybody else is in between. And so what I see is, as a middle adult, you know and you see what happened in your childhood, and it's an opportunity to fix it. It's an opportunity to talk to the youth in your lineage and say, hey, this is who we are, this is who we come from, I want to embrace you, but I also want you to know this is what I went through and these are the mistakes I made, and if you don't want to make them, here's what you can do, let me show you. And then it's also a time too to reap the benefits of the grandparents and your parents and your family, and really extract all the knowledge that they have, which is something that I'm also considering, because I'm really grateful that my grandparents are still alive. I'm 26 and all my grandparents are still alive. So that is really a gift for me, despite not living close to them. And then I also think we just live in a country where there is a proportion of people leading the country who are not elders. We need real elders. So if you are approaching an elderly age, look at the work that you've done. Are you emotionally capable to lead? Are you going to be teaching and passing down healthy behavior? Because right now we have older people leading, but we have children in maturity leading. And I think that's where the toxic environment is really stemming from, is that there are no leaders. There are not people who are elders that we can really call to. And I think that's the call to action, is we need elders. That's all.
Yeah. Elders. Actually, that's one of my Essential Stories series in the queue, is Woke Elders, and a Woke Elders series that we're working on. Kiki, did you want to add anything? Or are you guys ready for we have a question from the audience. All right, so this is from Paul Agnew. I don't know how to say your last name, Paul, sorry. What is your view of the idea that Native American history demonstrates the ideological superiority of the Iroquois nation in their allowing an abundance of thought and ideas, and how that directly opposes the violent, insular, white supremacist philosophy responsible for the eradication of Native cultures? I'll say that one more time because it's a heady question, and let's just be clear. What is your view of the idea that Native American history demonstrates the ideological superiority of the Iroquois nation in their allowing an abundance of thought and ideas, and how that directly opposes the violent, insular, white supremacist philosophy responsible for the eradication of Native cultures?
Can you summarize that maybe a little bit? Because it feels like I'm not getting it still.
So the beginning half of that statement is a little confusing for me also, because I don't know that Native American history, well, I think what he's saying is that when you look at Native American history, well, really I would say pre-colonial history, the Iroquois nation was sort of a very vivid model of the idea of people, while people had leaders and elected leaders, people were also self-governed and allowed to be, the individual was celebrated. So I think that's what he's indicating here. And, their ability to allow abundance in thought and ideas and, bridge 6 nations together peacefully. Within those nations were many, many different clans and, peoples and cultures. And for more than 1,000 years, they were all able to function and interact and be with their differences. So I think that's what he's referring to. And he's asking, how does that, what's your view on the idea of how that directly opposes, the situation that we're in now, where, white supremacy has borrowed from the Iroquois nation, its constitution and some of its structures of government, but it's also led to the desecration of native cultures and eradication of native cultures. So I think he's asking, how did that happen? To me, the answer seems kind of obvious, but if you want to jump in and say something on that, then please do.
I think that a lot of, we talk about appropriation with indigenous cultures every day. And so I think it's just another stealing of an idea and taking it, because I know that there's been discussion about that, but not not really. I think that's what it is. I think it is borrowing an idea or a democracy. And like she said, Kanyon, like she said, that just picking and choosing the best parts. And that's where we get the word wasichu, which is fat taker, which means taking of the best parts. And unfortunately, that's what white Eurocentric colonialism is, from my point of view, is that it's taking, taking of our culture, taking the best parts, leaving the not so pretty parts. And so I think that that's what I see it as, is taking what they wanted, what was best suited for them.
Or maybe taking some of its good parts for certain people. Our audience member clarified his question. He says, do you agree that the Iroquois model of government was superior to white supremacy? I do. Perhaps better worded as, let's talk about the Iroquois model. Can anybody speak to that? I would say, in answer to that question, I know a bit about the Iroquois culture, and I think that is a history worth knowing in terms of democracy. But what it has in common with pretty much every other First Nation and Indigenous nation on the planet is matriarchy and a balance between men and women, and a reverence for elders and a reverence for children. And so really you can look at almost any Indigenous model that's pre-colonial and find the same treasures. And that's why we're here, is to explore what what can be borrowed from any First Nation culture around the world that's that has something to teach us in the now, in terms of, as we have all these conversations through BLM and other social justice movements around dismantling, you know, the systems, the police, the hierarchical government, the education system, the et cetera, what are we going to replace it with? And how do we make sure that whoever does the dismantling doesn't identify with the oppressor and become the next generation to oppress the next group of people? So that's what we're here to explore and keep digging into.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the Iroquois other than I've heard that they had a beautiful model for democracy that was partially copied. So I have nothing I can add to that. But I just wanted to presume to add a little comment. As an elder, I can't help but realize that I'm 76 years old. And so I seem to be some kind of elder, and I'm not in any position of political power, but I have been acknowledged as co-founder of Musical Ambassadors of Peace, a nonprofit, and have a leadership role in a lot of ways. And I just wish to encourage everyone who's younger and so who sometimes gets knocked off course. And I guess, Molly, I'm so happy to see you on your healing path, because I feel like you had a huge struggle. And all I can suggest from this position that I sit in is honor your creativity above all else, because however big or how small your impulse toward making something might be, I think that you will find that once you get yourself immersed in that project, that little by little, just like in Cara's poem about the caterpillar turning into the butterfly, little by little, the caterpillar cells get replaced by the butterfly being, and it's your own creativity that nourishes that new butterfly that's growing out of you. And that if you younger people can just believe in your own creativity, whatever. I know, Kiki, you're a musician like I was, and so you're in the fire of creativity. And Naomi, you've got a beautiful arena that you're operating in, so many healing paths, and I just want to applaud that creative instinct, because we'll never defeat the patriarchy with anger. That's kind of like fighting fire with fire. So we can set out a new example, a new paradigm, a new precedent, a leadership model that younger people yet can follow by honoring that deep creativity in whatever realm. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. I think we can move into, well, we've got one more question from the audience, and then we'll do calls to action. Sage Menino is asking, as an early childhood educator sitting with a multicultural demographic, how do we bridge the gap of social equity, uplift, and meeting the needs of the classroom? Any thoughts? I think the creativity thing definitely applies there.
Could you read that one more time?
Sure. So the question is, as an early childhood educator sitting with a multicultural demographic, how do we bridge the gap of social equity and uplift while meeting the needs of the classroom? I think definitely the creativity thing is key. Making education creative and multifaceted and dynamic. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very passionate about kids. I work with kids all the time. You know, I understand, I say it all the time, I understand the importance of what I'm doing now and the impact it's going to have on those who come after me. And so for anyone working in early education or education in general, that's a prime opportunity to directly impact those folks that will govern our tomorrow world. And so when you talk about like the multi-demographics, and it's so funny because I actually just watched a documentary on Netflix about this, about the inequalities in our education, and how, to be frank, if you're not white or rich, you don't have access to substantial education. It's, you know, and then the conqueror is the one who is also teaching the education at the same time. So you know, and it's funny, my mom's actually a teacher, and I think I told her one time, you know, I would love to be a historian, a history teacher, because it gives me the opportunity to share history that I'm now learning, that's helping me with my journey and where I am in life. And I think that's beyond me, that I'm 29 now, and I'm at the point where I'm just learning these very crucial, beautiful things about what led to me being here. And I wish I would have had access to this a long time ago. That would have stopped a whole lot of depression and a whole lot of me thinking that I wasn't good enough, me thinking, you know, that maybe I wasn't conditioned for the world, and inevitably leading towards like a suicidal thoughts. I felt out of place, you know. I always think of that movie, Hidden Figures, and Taji Henson. And one of the things that she was saying in the interview was she was mad, kind of sort of, when she found out about this role, because growing up, she never got the opportunity to learn that someone that looked like her was an astronaut. You know, we get portrayed in today's media in a completely different light. So the fact that that was something that someone that looked like her accomplished, you know, she was a little upset that she didn't have access to that information. And so when you are in the position of educating those young folk, when you are in the position of any kind of power, you know, Cameron was just saying that, you know, he has a leadership role. Any opportunity where you get to connect with someone else and live your and be your full self in front of someone else, that's an opportunity to educate, and acknowledging that, hey, you know, there are going to be a group of kids who come from one area who might not be able to have class now because they can't afford the internet, or they can't afford a computer. That's a real thing. That's what we're facing now with this COVID, is there are kids in various communities who have abusive homes, that don't have food, all these different things. It's in their face right now, even more so. And so especially now that we have COVID, and we have this uncertain world that we're moving forward in 2020. I don't know what happened with this year, but it was not the 2020 vision that people were talking about. It was going to be, but to, you know, now even more so, if you're in the wearing the hat of an educator, you're going to be one of the most important persons that anyone is going to get the opportunity to meet if they're still learning. One, they'll be able to connect to the world. They'll understand how the world works, how it operates. And we have to be honest with our kids. Like I said, I'm 29, learning things that I should have learned a long time ago. We shouldn't have any other generation go through that. We shouldn't have folks that, I don't want to keep getting a scenario. Point blank simple, you have a great opportunity, let those kids know who they are, allow those kids to use their voice, allow those kids to question everything. Someone said it earlier. That's my favorite slogan, question everything. Because, you know, like we've identified, we live in a world that's constructed on lies, you know, lies and theft. We live in a world that's taken so much from so many different people, to the point where it all seems so scrambled that we can't get to the source, but we have those tools. So I'm sorry I was very long-winded with that one, but I feel very passionate. Yeah.
All good stuff to hear. And I want to just echo one thing you said, which was teach with your whole self. And I think that can be applied. I saw here that the question was actually originally meant to be meeting the needs of the community, but I think everything you just said can be applied in both arenas, in the classroom and the community. So great. And so now we'll do our calls to action. So that's whoever you want to aim that toward. If you want to aim that toward the community at large, if you want to aim that to each other as activists and artists and visionaries, or if you want to give the call to action to a specific community of people.
I'll go. So this is something that I struggle with. And I think, and this is just for anyone who it penetrates and who hears it. I struggle with like overthinking and just this overconsumption of information and just being way too intellectual. And I yearn and I feel sad for the part of me that doesn't have the strong intuition that I used to have as a child. And so, you know, I think coming back to the patriarchy, it is brainwashing. You grow up thinking that it's a white world, it's a white Christian world, and you know, it's so brainwashing that most of the white people in the country actually think that they own the place, and it's not that. We don't own, no one owns it. We are born here. We nurture the land because it nurtures us. And I think slowing down, not consuming so much information, not overthinking everything is where that clarity comes through, and you can really get in tune with your higher self. And so that's what I'm working on, and that's what I call for others who are listening. And then a more tangible, concrete thing is to still call for justice for Breonna Taylor. That's it.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
Cameron?
Molly's got something to say.
Oh, I just wanted, you know, we live in this society, we ourselves, my family, we live in a small town, very racist, very bigoted, very prejudiced, and very Christian. And so if you are not Christian, if you are, don't follow the ways that they want you to follow, there are a lot of prejudices held against you. And my call to action would be that we begin understanding that we live in a country, we live on Turtle Island, where there are many beliefs, there are many religions, there are many spiritualities, there are many colors. And that we begin opening our minds to the differences that we have, and we stop being prejudiced against people such as me. I'm not Christian. I'm Lakota, so I follow the Lakota ways, which also means we don't follow Christianity. We don't follow Christian holidays. We don't celebrate Christmas. We don't celebrate Thanksgiving. And so to me, it is very offensive when the schools up here tell my daughter how sad it is that she doesn't get presents for Christmas. And the reality is that the Lakota people are very giving. And so it's not just one day or one birth set aside for presents. It's throughout the year, it's every day that we are giving of ourselves. And so, you know, our holidays fall on the change of seasons. And we aren't different. There's nothing bad about us. And then we, as people, we recognize we're not all the same, and we can't expect everyone to be the same. And we need to respect other people's beliefs and their values. When you're racist, yeah, you're gonna get called out. But when you're just someone living a different life than other than Christianity, and wearing that white skin, we're different, but it doesn't make us bad, doesn't make us stand out. So that's my call to action, is that we respect one another, whether you worship whatever or you're Christian. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I love what you're saying, Molly, about respecting everybody under the sun. And I have a call to action I'm thinking about, which has to do with fear, and it has to do, unfortunately, with these COVID-19 times, and it has to do with the patriarchy. And I can't help but notice, along with a lot of other people, that patriarchal control moves forward sometimes into an accepting population with some message that they're going to make the world safer. Yes, we're going to make the world safer for you, and so do what we say, is basically what ends up happening. And you know, I mean, occasionally, maybe with good luck, it's a win-win situation, but all too often there's secret little sabotaging landmines hidden in those actions that were supposed to make us safer. So my call to action suggestion is, when you're moving forward with your creativity and someone looks at you and says, but isn't that scary? Oh, but you know, aren't you endangering your kids and your family and your friends by doing, you know, have courage. Don't worry about trying to make the world safe, because the safest world is the one in which everybody lives in a small cage all alone. Well, no, that is not what we're looking for here. We're looking for healthy, loving community where we're all close together all the time. And it's not always safe. That's cool. It's not supposed to always be safe. It's supposed to always be an exciting adventure. So, creativity.
Thanks, Cameron. Kiki, action?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of mentioned it a little bit in talking about education, but you know, I would just encourage all the listeners out there to, you know, once again, remember that everything you do is an opportunity to teach someone, and that's, you know, not even just in the education sense, but just in the work sense. Just anytime that you interact with someone else, that's going to impact both of your lives in some way. And so I just encourage people to once again to acknowledge that there are other people around you. People don't just happen, they're made. So those folks that you're involved with have experiences that they've gone through, that they've encountered, that made them who they are. I encourage folks to continuously question everything. We have to understand that the reason why we have so much conflict right now is because we've been on the same trajectory for a very, very long time, and we haven't been compelled enough to go into a new direction. So because of that, we have conflict everywhere, on every continent, because there were Europeans who came, took, and just devastated that continent. I was watching, I love documentaries, but I was watching The Business of Drugs on Netflix, and it was just talking about I want to say Thailand, and the issues that they were having in Thailand, and how one of the things that spawned from this crisis was one of the things that happened that spawned this drug crisis was, colonization, that Europeans came and just divided tribes along lines without any care for what was happening beforehand, and so we have to be conscious that can continues to happen, with gentrification, with all kind of things, with the globalization of the whole world. There is a potential for us to continuously to devastate the narrative of the people that have been here, so once again, just acknowledging everybody comes from something, everybody has a story, knowing that you don't know everything, and don't be afraid to learn, to open yourself up to learn something about somebody else. That's the only way that we're going to mend our problems. We talked about color so much, we talked about gender so much, but once again, those are societal constructs. We, at the end of the day, have skin, we have muscles, we have neurons, we have a brain, we have all these things similarly, thus making us a part of this human family. So don't forget your cousins. That's how I'm gonna wrap that up.
Yeah, amen. Well, thank you all for being part of this important conversation and sharing space and lending your voice and perspective. And for me, this conversation embodies exactly what you're talking about, Kiki. Just being able to learn about each other and make discoveries and see where we all overlap, and what vision we share, and what we can how we can continue to inspire each other towards those goals. And so we'll wrap up the evening here. I want to thank our audience and our co-hosts again for joining us. Our next Essential Stories conversation will be on Wednesday, August 26th, same time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. And the topic will be truth and reconciliation. So thank you all again, and I will connect you to each other so that you can stay in contact and continue to have more conversations and more inspiration, and keep playing music, keep inspiring the youth, keep sewing beautiful skirts, as I was seeing Molly do through this conversation, I'm guessing. And thank you so much. Good night.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
Yeah, Cara, way to go. Thank you.